Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Ankerstar Wealth Morning Update. We are on Tuesday. We didn't get a show out yesterday because there was so much going on. We wanted to wait for the big Apple announcement, and then, it was more of a wah. But that's going to be our first topic of the day. It's kind of peeling that back. What did Apple say? What did people expect? And how did it hit the stock? Or is it going to help the stock? We'll peel that back here a little bit. I'll cover that. Then Mike's going to switch kind of like to the opposite ends of the spectrum. We have, the top third or the number three company in the world. Used to be number one not too long ago. Now he's going to talk about gold, right? Like yawn, like old people, get off my lawn, right? So that's sort of, should you have gold exposure? How's it performed? It's kind of been popular lately. And, honestly, every time we have CNBC on in the office, and I haven't seen William Shatner in a little while, but you always have some respected figure that matches the age of the retired group that says every day is a good day to buy gold. I don't know that that's true. I don't think every day can be a good day to buy anything. But anyhow, you see those ads. And then we're going to switch right back up into the tech world with Crowdstrike. You've heard that name. It's in our ego stock portfolios. They got picked up for the S&P 500, which is like, high fives, victory lap all around. Nice bump to the stock. What does it mean going forward? Mike's going to talk about that. But before we get started, it's a financial education presentation. We have to do our own due diligence before acting upon anything you hear in this presentation. More information is available at AnkerstarWealth.com, and the opinions expressed are Mike and mine alone. So I don't know who sat there and watched the 3 hours plus of the Apple deal. I did not personally. We had it on for a little while, right? Because we wanted to hear, are they going to call it like, Steve made the dumbest call ever saying they were going to call it the iPhone AI. Steve was wrong, but I think Steve would have moved the stock on that, but we'll see. So they didn't preview what the next iPhone name is going to be. But I found this headline. So they talked about a lot of stuff, and it's amazing stuff, and it's Apple, and I'm a fanboy, so I grain of salt. But yeah, I liked everything I heard. But what was the street looking for? They were looking for this like all in like 10-meter dive with no splash, into AI, releasing like, magic into the universe, right? And I don't know that happened, but I thought this headline was funny. Is Apple execs explain why its AI is different from competitors? Sometimes when you have to do a lot of explaining, that means the message probably wasn't perfect going out because they're having to try to, keep talking about it, sort of thing. But Apple stock, let's get down here to, what's new? Where is Apple AI going to be? It's going to be everywhere. So it's going to be in the new phones. So if you have certain versions of the iPhone 15, which I'm still rocking a 14, right? So, I guess I don't get it. I'm going to upgrade this year anyway to hopefully the iPhone AI, but the 16, whatever it's called. But you're going to have a newer phone. So is that genius? Well, from a shareholder perspective, yes. For those of you who don't like spending $1,000 on phones, no, right? But it is going to kind of force folks into a super cycle, if you will, with the iPhone, which is going to be good for investors. But they talked about the new Vision Pro. They talked about iOS 18. They talked about everything with an M1 or above chip is going to support some AI. I am kind of warming up to this whole AI being present. I see it on Google now when I look, I look things up. I see it on Facebook. There's always like a little meta AI explanation, of whatever the topic is of the post. So I'm liking it. I really am. It's kind of there. I know a lot of people are hating it, get off my lawn sort of thing, get off my Facebook page. But I kind of like it. It's just access to more information. I did find one that was wrong though. So, there was one that was wrong that I found personally is how to send a wire to Schwab, and it brought up the wrong directions. Didn't like that. And then the one that went out yesterday is analysts still seem to love NVIDIA despite a 90% drop because AI couldn't process the 10-for-1 split. So it thought there was a 90% price drop in NVIDIA, but it says analysts like it. So I don't know. So it still gets a little question mark behind whether you can take this to the bank. But we're used to that, right? You Google stuff online and you go, well, I did see it on the internet. So it's probably right, but there's also a chance that it's not. But ultimately, how's it affecting the stock? I don't look at one-day charts very often, but we'll start with the one-day chart and say, okay, well, obviously, they started at 9 Pacific time. No, it was
10
I don't, it was
Pacific.
local, noon local. So whenever that was. But they started and into the afternoon, you could see like mentions of AI, and it goes screaming higher,
Yeah.
and then it drops off, and then kind of goes back and forth in the seesaw. But when you look off to the right, we're talking between 196 and 193 during the trading day. So ultimately, not that big of a needle mover, to be honest. The bigger story is let's back up to a year to date. Obviously, Apple was down for a while, down towards the mid 160s, and as you can see, it was a screaming buy then. But yeah, it's been kind of running up into this event. So where's it going to go from here? I don't think it's going to sell off much. I really don't. I think it's going to hold the 190s or so, unless the overall market goes down. But just as an individual stock, I think it's fine. I really do. People expected the world. They didn't quite deliver the world, but they like what they saw, and I'm sure there are people digging into it far more than we are this morning. So you'll hear more on that. So, all right, I'm going to stop sharing. Let's turn it over to Mike. Let's hear about gold and then CrowdStrike.
Hey, and Steve, I'll say I'm on my
Yeah.
iPhone 13. Oh, like I'm way
13
behind. But I always
dinosaur.
ask my kids, I'm like, why do I need to upgrade? Tell me why I need to upgrade. And I always hear, oh, it's a better phone capability, more megapixels, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, how more graphic can the pictures be? And so I'm never motivated by, all the camera capability. So with the AI though, it's something different. It's like help, as I read up on this, sell me on it. I certainly will be in line to upgrade my phone. Plus, I think my 3-year cycle with AT&T is up, so it'd be time to upgrade one. So
There you go.
so I know that this is a software update. The hardware updates for Apple come out in September. So, we'll see what the effect is. But this will be a good reason to upgrade other than like your battery just wearing out. So let me get into gold. And I pulled a quote, Steve talked about William Shatner, Star Trek. And we got Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Commodities such as gold and silver have world market that transcends national borders, politics, religion, and race. A person may not like someone's religion, but he'll accept his gold. So they like, he likes gold. I found lots of stuff on him and gold, but I saw this article yesterday and it intrigued me enough to read it, not to invest in it, but to read it. But it says gold is getting harder to find as miners struggle to excavate more. And I thought, well, that sounds interesting. And, like you think back in the 1840s when, in the United States, people, wasn't even the United States, but I mean, people just went west and found gold laying around. And like, it was really easy to find gold back then, kind of. I'm sure they had to do some work, but it was easier than it is now. But when you look at the last few years, and I found there's a couple quotes out of this. After 10 years of rapid growth, the mining industry has struggled to sustain growth in production. Thought this was interesting. 187,000 metric tons of gold have been mined, and they believe there's 57,000 more. And I'll have a graph on this in just a second, similar numbers. Another thing in this article that also talked about it takes 10 to 20 years to get a mine ready before you can start mining gold. 10 to 20 years. That's a lot of work. Now, and here's I like this graph I found, but it shows how much above ground gold we have. 190,000. This is 2017. 190,000 tons, and how much is left? 54,000 tons. That obviously these are estimates. I mean, who knows? Maybe we can go out Austin, Texas, and if they really knew there was that much below ground, they just go right to where it was and they just take it out, right? So, but it's the idea of it. And as I thought about it, Bitcoin crossed my mind because I never think of Bitcoin, right? Now I do, but Bitcoin has 21 million coins. So many have been mined. There's so many left. There's a set amount, and that's one of the attractions of Bitcoin compared to and I will say compared to gold. You think of gold as if you had a ton of gold, which none of us do, but if you had a lot of it, it has to be stored and protected, down at Fort Knox or wherever this gold is all stored. There is some in jewelry, but whereas something like, say, a cryptocurrency, and I'm saying a store of value cryptocurrency, it's not as expensive to hold it. But let's take a look at gold year to date. So here is a year to date graph of gold against the S&P 500. Wow, look at that. It's pretty much right on the exact pace. And in fact, the gold is the blue, so it kind of spiked up actually over the S&P 500 for a little bit when the S&P dropped. But wow. And occasionally I get somebody ask me like, hey, should I put gold in my portfolio? And I'm very like, gold doesn't really earn you money. It doesn't do anything. It's just a store of value. You have to pay to protect it, so there's a cost of holding it. But let's back it up. Let's the belief on gold is it would be a hedge against inflation. So there we can look at a 1-year chart. The S&P beats it in a 1 year by about 5%. And then check this out, Steve. It'll probably surprise you. On a 5-year, the S&P only beats gold by 12%. I mean, that's not a
I would have
lot
thought, yeah, a lot more
on 5
right?
years. And you can see even lately it's starting to track together, which isn't great for gold as a hedge, because if it correlates with the S&P, you might as well just be in the S&P. But let's back up and we're going to look at the big graph, and this is the one that'll should discourage you from owning gold. If we go back to 1982, so we're looking at 40 some years, the S&P crushes it. So in the short term, it can look like something you want to be in, and maybe someone on TV could show you a thing and say, hey, over the last 3 months or 6 months, gold's a better investment. Buy. Over the long term, and that's what we're holding for, is the long term. Stick with the stock market, stick with our investments, stick with the S&P 500, but gold is not where I'd want to be. Sorry, William Shatner. Now, if he's selling Star Trek, rights, maybe we'll buy those. Okay, so hey, talking about mining for gold. One of the things that we do is we pick out an EGO 5 and 10 stocks. So these are stocks that we think can do really, really well. Very aggressive positions. Sometimes they go down. They can go up and then go down hard because they're aggressive. They're not the Apples and Amazons that are very well laid out. One of the stocks that we picked earlier this year in January was Crowdstrike. Cybersecurity, can't miss, like everybody needs cybersecurity. Sadly, the bad guys are out there. Palo Alto is the, pretty much the overall leader. But one of the stocks that we picked was Crowdstrike, and they were selected, and very prestigiously, one of 3 stocks to be added to the S&P 500 this year, and replacing 3 other ones. So 3 get joined, 3 get kicked out. But since a lot of people just invest in the S&P 500, this causes a sudden surge of money into these 3 stocks. And I didn't go look at KKR or GoDaddy, but obviously I did look at CrowdStrike. So let me pull up CrowdStrike's stock. So here is a year to date. So we invested back in January, kind of right mid-January, and you can see, up until they got named, it was trading up a little, not a much, but look at that spike, all of a sudden up to $380 a share, and the 52 weeks 385. So that was one example of something that we really like. Now, it has CrowdStrike taken over Palo Alto for the industry lead for cybersecurity. They're getting very close. And sometimes, I want to say it was Jack Welch. Somebody said you want to either be number 1 or 2 in this industry. You don't want to be number 9 or 10. So, you think Pepsi Coke, you think, I'm trying to think of some other ones. As far as the phone companies, you figure Apple iOS versus Samsung. But let's take a look at CrowdStrike versus Palo Alto. And here is their stock on a 1-year chart. So Palo Alto, fantastic company. I'm not saying anything bad about them, but when you look at the return comparing each other on a 1-year basis, CrowdStrike's up about 70%, Palo Alto's up 23%. So first of all, 23% in a year is very good. So let's not discount that. That's a great return in a year. But 69% is a lot better. So opportunities. It's not always picking the biggest stock. Certainly you can say a NVIDIA can run, but if we could identify the second, third type chip that's right behind it, striking at them, there's a lot of upside potential, but there's also a lot of risk too. So, but hey, I just want to say, since we do have some down ones, at least we had a really good up one and call that out. I wish I could pick stocks that were going to go on the S&P 500. That would be a great thesis. Just buy those ones, and we'll take the big upside. But we don't know, they don't know, and it's kind of we don't know until it happens. So good news for us, and hopefully we don't see any of ours drop from the S&P 500.
There you go. Good stuff, Mike. Pull up GoDaddy. I am familiar with it. They hit all-time highs yesterday, GDDY, if you will. We have a couple clients that were either current or former employees there, and you could see, kind of the once it pops up here, a huge run up in GoDaddy. Pull up the 1 year, year to date, either one, and you can see, yeah, it's been straight line higher, right, from 100 to 140. Now, when they go into there is a downside of going into the S&P 500, is that now your overall exposure to the market is increased as far as the correlation. So now when the market sells off, you will get unfairly drugged down with the rest of the market because of the way the SPY trades. So, all right, you can bring that down, Mike. Next time, though, I love the chart you had about gold. Let's see if we can find a Bitcoin chart of that shows, like how much has been mined and how much is yet to be mined, as I think it would be pretty educational. And lastly, I'll close with, you can't keep Apple down. Look at that. We're not live, but I swear that the office is bugged and it goes out to the greater market because they probably heard our commentary this morning and they're thinking, you know what? It's time to pile in. I thought that Apple would probably just hold 190 here. It appears that it's going higher today. So as people, as things go, there's the emotional reactions initially and algorithms that are programmed to catch every word and all that stuff that causes these spikes. But really, as you let the minds get to it, that's where you can see the market is obviously voting that some of the stuff that was brought out yesterday is going to actually hit the spot. So, all right, very interesting stuff. Obviously, previewing, we got the market selling off overall. However, because of the Fed meeting and people are nervous about what's going to happen there. But that's all we have for today, and we will be back with you tomorrow. We have a little bit of travel, so we'll see exactly when and where our next meeting is, but hopefully you'll like it. With that, we'll let you go. You guys have a good one. Bye.